All right. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee Q&A, your daily dose of Coffee Q&A here on the OnoCoffee channel. I'm your host. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're just joining us for the very first time, we do this live stream about coffee most Monday through Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern. So good to see you. Who's out here today? Fiona's here. Cheryl Alt is here. Welcome, Cheryl Alt. Good to see you. Power Plant is with us. Maku, Kent. And Power Plant says, McCafe is better than Starbucks. I don't know. I haven't, I haven't drank enough at either of those two really to know. But like Power Plant's comment mentions, today we're going to be talking a little bit about Starbucks closures here in the United States. Something Keone brought up last week, and I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I hadn't heard about it. I don't really watch the news too much. I'm just kind of in my little bubble of coffee and woodworking. But I looked it up and I've been reading about it a little bit. And so over the weekend, Starbucks in the United States closed 400 locations, or they're working on closing 400 locations this year to pare down their whole portfolio. And that actually, and while, the news here was like, making a big deal about it, like, oh, it's 400 stores, all these people are getting laid off. If you look at the size of Starbucks, which at the start of the 2025, they had set 739 stores, so a significant amount of that's 18,000 stores. And now they're going to end up at 18,300 stores. So even at 18,300, if they were to close 400 of those stores, it's still like 1% of the stores that they have. And it's like, to think about it, that whole idea is staggering. Like right now, we have 350 million people in the United States. And if we were to take 18,300 and divide it by that, oh, that's not, there's still one store for every 19,000 people. That's still quite a lot. And I'm sure, Starbucks will eventually grow again because, what this happened once in 2004. Starbucks went through a phase where they closed up a whole bunch of stores. And that's how a lot of people that were in the business at the time, in the coffee business, were able to get a lot of equipment for very cheap because Starbucks was selling off all their La Marzocos and all of their Mazdas and all their equipment, and everyone's like, "Oh, we're buying." They were selling them at like rock bottom prices, right? So it was really kind of the heyday of getting stuff. Powerplant says, "Beware Luckin Coffee." Oh god, but yeah, but Luckin, how many locations does Luckin have? They still need to catch up. 18,300 locations is the deal. Kelly says, "When I heard about it, I was wondering if the tariffs on coffee imports had." I don't think so. Coffee tariffs are significant for sure, but Starbucks is a very big company with a lot of capital resources. I put an article in the show notes where it shows Starbucks CEO Brian Nichols, his compensation is $96 million. $96 million for the CEO. Now, that's just the CEO. Now you've got all these other C-level people, C-suite people that are getting, millions, tens of millions of dollars in compensation. And there's multiples of those. And then you've got the rest of the executive staff that's going to get, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So, Starbucks has got a boat ton of money, right? They've got plenty of money. I wonder, I wonder how much you can really save by closing 400 stores when the top end of your company is so heavy, right? And I think this is true of American capitalism today, is that top ends of companies are very heavy. And maybe I'm a little more sensitive because I've been a union person for over 30 years. And, I see Starbucks people wanting to unionize, and it's like, But for me, it's not a question of whether or not they deserve a union. Like a lot of people will try to frame it, do they deserve a union? But the thing to me is that how is it that we are in 2025, modern times, we are supposed to be the most advanced nation in the planet, right? We're supposed to be better than all the other barbarian, savage nations of the world. But our people still struggle. Our people still feel the need to have a union, right? To who our people in modern times still feel that they have the need for collective bargaining to protect their interests from corporate overlords. This is the part that boggles my mind, right? Like unions started many years ago because of exploitation, right? Child labor were being exploited, people were being exploited. Pennies, for per day they're getting paid for essentially killing themselves. So the labor unions formed and fought their way to and battled the corporations, and they got a lot of the concessions that we have today, things like 5-day work weeks, 8-hour work days, things like that, holidays and stuff. You would think that in a country that was truly great, the people would live better. And so to me, it's not the unions and Starbucks is not a question of whether or not baristas are deserving of unions. My concern is that why do baristas feel the need to have a union? And this is me as both as a union member, as well as someone that has been an employer, right? If we were more concerned about how we take care of our people, perhaps we wouldn't be in these situations. Fiona says, when I heard about it, I was wondering if the truth. Oh, yeah, I read that already. Oh my gosh, I got a little bit of sniffle. Power Plant says it's all Orange Man's fault. Blame Orange Man. I mean, well, the guy is the president, and the one president said the buck stops here, and this is a president who believes that the buck doesn't stop. Well, the buck stops with him because all dollars flow to him, right? It's just like in the Philippines we had a period of dictatorship, and I remember one of the things that one of the people that I knew, my brother had a driver when they lived there, and so his driver was taking me into Makati one night because I was going down, and he's like, yeah, he'll take you because he's got to pick up some stuff. And so him and I are talking, and this guy is young at the time, he's 25 at the time, young, has, ambitious, educated, intelligent. He wants to have a better future for his children. And we're talking about the upcoming elections at that time. And the elections and he was like, talking about, and he said to me, this is like over 10 years ago. And he was like, things were better under Marcos. And I was like, what? And I was sitting in the car and I was like, and I'm thinking in my mind, what the, is this guy crazy? Right? I was like, but, and I was about to like unleash on him. Right? I was like, but then I thought, let me listen to what this guy thinks. And so I said, well, tell me more. And he tells me, his thing. And so I was on the way to my hangout with my crew, right? And the guys that I hang out with in Manila for cigars, they're all very successful, educated, well-to-do, connected people. One of them is a congressman, and another one is friend of the current president of the Philippines, and one of the guys who's fairly liberal, right, in Philippine politics. Him and I were talking. I said, hey, my brother's driver just told me this. What do you? And I was like, what are you talking? And he's like, well, the reality is that, yeah, he's right. In many respects, in some respects, it was better under Marcos during the dictatorship because all corruption flowed in one direction, right? So anything that was happening was flowing to Marcos. All of it flowed to him. Right? So if you were paying tribute, which means you're paying a bribe to anyone, it all works its way up to Marcos. So it's all one big funnel. And he was like, but now after he was kicked out with the revolution, and this part was really true because I experienced this many times, and everyone that I know experiences. But now in modern times, there's a lot of tributes to be paid. but you have to pay tribute to everyone. Like there's now, before the hands were out, but the hand, fed one person, right? Billions going that way. But now it's like everybody's feeding themselves. So to get things done, whether you're just a regular common person like my brother's driver was, or if you're like some of my friends who are very successful in business, well connected, everybody's paying. Right? And so this current president that we have here in the United States kind of has that same thing. Everything is to enrich him and enrich his own glory. And I as an American, I find that offensive, right? Like we're supposed to be a nation of people, not a nation of cheese doodle. Power plant says, still mad that Starbucks bought out the Clover and then they did a lot with it, to be honest with you. They utilize the technology in other things. So they did roll out the Clover as a brewing device in their reserve stores. And actually, to be honest with you, screw Clover. I don't give a damn what happened to them. Those guys are a bunch of jerk-offs. But they did take the technology. And I remember one time I was at a Harris Teeter. And here in the United States, Harris Teeter is a grocery store chain. And I was at a grocery store chain. I walked in one day. It was the one that was out by Ellicott City. And I see this machine, this vending machine, huge, normal American-sized vending machine, says Seattle's best coffee. And I was like, oh, Seattle's best coffee? There's a vending machine? I got to at least try it. So I put my money in, hit the button, and I heard it working. And I was like, I know that sound. Inside the machine, what was brewing my coffee was a Clever brewer. The sound is unmistakable. I was like, oh, because I'd worked with a lot of the early Clovers, and yeah, cool machine. But $7,000. What am I going to do with that? Coffee Coach says, I agree, power plant. Starbucks is hit and miss, mostly miss. 2 times had a fantastic cup, but terribly bad on revisits. Had different baristas. I mean, I hear you on that, but I think but the truth of the matter is, we. I say we as myself being part of the coffee business, right? We, especially those of us in the specialty coffee third wave sector, we're part of the problem, right? But we people of my generation of coffee and professionals and subsequent professionals, encourage. So I never did, but I mean, like collectively we did. We encourage this kind of condescension and pretense and a whole bunch of jerk offs acting, like they know more than the guest and that they're supposed to be lauded for something like that. And I was like, well, if I go to my doctor, I certainly want him to know more about medicine and healthcare than I know. Makes no sense if I don't. Like I would tell my staff, when we would hire them, say, this is our whole thing is that you're supposed to know more than the guest. Like you're the one that's a barista. You're the professional here. Like you're supposed to know more. That's not a special thing. That's not anything like remarkable. That's just the bottom baseline requirement that you're supposed to know more than the guest that walks in because you're supposed to be their guide. So, but we in especially coffee, we encouraged a lot of that jerk off kind of activity. People like that acted like they had a lot of man, God, nothing pissed me off more, and even to this day, than that. I'm like, but I have to be honest with you, and I hear you. There's always going to be somebody at somewhere. Like I had one guy at Home Depot the other day, just pissed me off because I'm like, you don't have to have fucking attitude, right? But like, he was but anyway, but there's always someone. But overall, I gotta say, when I go to Starbucks, most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time that I've been to Starbucks, and I don't really go very often, the staff has always been very nice. Like it's always for me, it's always a very pleasant experience. Now I haven't, again, like I said, I haven't been to Starbucks in, I don't even know how long it's been. It could very well have been the last time I was at Starbucks was over a year and a half ago when I took my niece there. I think that's right. Karen says there have not been any announcements. I don't think they're closing stores outside the United States. I think they're closing stores in the United States for who knows. Maybe maybe they make the most money at United States stores. They're also, their system is also under threat from U.S. baristas who want to unionize, right? Like as an employer, if you allow unionization into your company, then you've got a problem, because now other locations may want to unionize, your whole workforce may want to unionize. And I think what Starbucks doesn't want to happen is that they don't want to become like GMC and have to face, a whole like labor force that is unionized, right? I don't think they want that. No, that cuts into their profitability. And, this is America. This is capitalism. You can't have anything cut into profitability here. Marcus says 2004 was the heyday of getting stuff. Like there was a company called TradeX. I can't remember. There was an auction company, and they were selling stuff at some point they had like container loads, like full on intermodal shipping container, 40-foot container loads of like grinders, and they were just selling it. You're like, what is this crazy? Like this grinder, I think was ex Starbucks, right? This Monster Major Auto, and I probably got it for $200-300. Like it was, in that time, that was still very like, oh, that was a heck of a deal. Or maybe it was less. Maybe it was $100. I don't remember. They were crazy deals. Like I think I got my La Marzocco Linea 4 group for maybe that was $400, and this was like $100. So it was really very affordable. They were pretty warm. No, they weren't, but they were used. They were well used. Like this one. Let's say this was a Starbucks. They're well used, so they've had thousands of pounds to. But really, these Mazers are like so bulletproof that basically all you have to do is replace the burrs, and you've got a perfectly fine machine. Like the motor is like super hardcore. Peter says, I only tried Starbucks 3 times, didn't think much of it. And I got to agree with you. Like, I don't, if you're into quality coffee, like, there's not too much to have. Yeah, if you're looking for a quality coffee experience with like diverse offerings, Starbucks is typically not the place to go. Starbucks Reserve might be the way to go. Like, I remember I was staying in a hotel several years ago in Manila, and there was a Starbucks Reserve store in the lobby, and I was like, well, I guess I'll drink there. Of course, the staff in the Philippines at this Reserve store, fantastic, enthusiastic, as quality a barista as you'd expect at a specialty coffee shop in Manila. So and Manila, when I say that, and I'm saying that as a qualification, as a qualifier, because Manila's the Philippines coffee scene is behind. They didn't start their specialty scene at the same time that the United States did. And those that were involved with the startup were all enthusiasts who started up and really kickstarted the whole Philippine coffee scene. So they were a generation, they were like 10 years behind. But they're catching, they've caught up quick, and it's very vibrant now. But back then, when I was at this place, the baristas at Starbucks were just as good as baristas at other specialty shops of that time. It's probably like 2018, I think it was. But the Starbucks, Reserve, they had some interesting coffees, and they were all prepared very well. So I really enjoyed the coffees that I had at this Starbucks. And I was like, oh, okay. Not too bad. Kat says she's never been to a Starbucks. You're not missing anything. Honestly, you're not missing anything. They announced also the closure of the original Starbucks Reserve Roastery in Seattle on Pike Street, and good riddance to that place. It was pretty like impressive it's an impressive facility, but when you've been in the business like I had, as I walked around the facility the first time in 2014, I was like, because you look at a lot of what they were doing, and they had just ripped us off. They had just ripped. And they were smart. They had watched our segment of the business, the third wave segment of the business, and saw what people were doing, technique wise, approach wise, design wise, and they took the best that the people in my sector had come up with, and ripped it off and put it in their stores, especially that Reserve Roastery. So good riddance to that place. Good riddance. Naomi, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Proplan says capitalism is our. It is. It really is, man. It really is. Americans will defend that capitalism to their death and to their detriment.